Hello, everyone. Welcome to the late afternoon session. I hope that you are still awake and you are still not too bored. My name is Jakub Bielikowski. I'm the enterprise architect with the Husqvarna group, and I will talk about moving beyond architecture. And actually, what I really want to talk is how we remove that mask of the alien or of the theatrical mask, which we are very often perceived via in the business as some strangers who are doing things which no one understands and which have a little value for them. And very often we are actually part of that game by putting those masks on ourselves. So just quickly about myself. I'm more than 30 years in consulting and IT business. I'm a chemical engineer, so I learned IT by trade. I have completed business studies in Warwick, and I've been working with Andersen before even people know that it will be mingled with Enron affair. Then I joined Oracle and worked for Oracle for quite a long time and doing projects in a lot of different countries worldwide. And about 7 years ago, I left Oracle and joined British Council. I've been acting as a head of architecture there globally. And 1 year ago, I moved back to the industry to Husqvarna Group when I'm working currently. You can see my profile and you will have my ID later on. And also maybe worth mentioning in my free time, I'm a fiction writer, and some of the lessons learned from that space are also relevant to my work as architect, because it showed to me quite clearly that it's not enough to do a good job and it's not enough to write a good piece of book if no one knows about it and if no one is willing to read it. So it doesn't matter that you may be recognized, you may even get some awards, but if people don't read you, you are still irrelevant. So your job is only as long valid as you are actually reaching your business stakeholders. And that's the most important question which you should ask yourself is, what is your purpose? What is our purpose as architects in the corporation? And that comes back to a little of the question raised by Nigel in the morning. So what we are doing, and I think that part of that picture is also showing what we should be doing. We should be helping the corporate garden to grow, and we should eliminate weeds if that is needed. We should be the ones who are not just saying, "Oh, that's not the way," but we should be actually part of that success quite actively. And that's what I believe we should be doing as architects. And that's why I want to share some of the stuff with you. And what brings me here is, in my experience, I have fallen in all these three traps. That I would call them a template trap, a method trap, and the software trap. What I really mean that as architects, we like to use a template to represent our work. We like to use method for enabling architecture in the company. And that may involve architecture method, that may involve a governance method. And on the end, we sooner or later are facing the need of using software, which may open yet another trap for ourselves. So let me quickly tackle those three and things how we can move beyond some of the frameworks limitation in our real life. So first, the template. And template has two purposes. It's for us as architects to order our work, to basically represent a reality, a business reality, in some sort of a template which we believe it's understandable and presentable. And ideally, it should also enable further work for us. So it should be the basis, for example, of capturing business capabilities and then putting them into our architecture repository and making sure that we can use them in the future. And it should be we should be able to communicate with those templates with our fellow architects, with IT people. But probably most important, also the template should serve the business. And the business has slightly different perspective. The business needs a template as a shared understanding. So actually, as a picture which says, yes, that's how we work as company. It should enable them to define how they should drive value. So what is important, what is less important, and enable change to identify things which they should change versus things which maybe should stay as they are. And the one thing which is common there is the 3 C's: communication, communication, communication. So essentially a template is most of all a communication tool, and we should really make a distinction what we like, what we understand versus what the business understands. And whereas I really personally quite like LeanIX, it's a good clean tool, and as architect it makes a lot of order. Usually when we show it to business people, we meet with the blank face. They don't even understand what the capability is about. And of course, we can try to present this maybe in a different format, whatever, left to right, north to south. That's example of my individual work. So basically, okay, how I represent the company. But very often we are met with basically business saying, but I'm sorry, guys, what are you talking about? What is capability? I don't even understand it. And business thinks in much simpler terms. We are the guys who get input, get transported to our factories, we produce something. We may have a lot of other business people, other business partners who produce things for us. When we produce it, we send it to our customers who may be in other factories, maybe some construction sites, maybe my end customers, retailers, whatever. They see the business in a very different way than what we communicate using the typical architecture templates. The other part that, they may be more from the marketing side and may see the business as, oh, that's a cycle. It's coming from sales, bringing the product, making people aware of it, selling it, and then doing after sales and evaluation. And very often, for example, this Milky Way approach, which is one of the methods also used even by our Swedish colleagues, is a very good if you talk with the marketing people. But the people from finance or from production, they don't really buy into that. And you have to find the right way to communicate to them. Maybe that's the business process, how they perceive the company. They basically see things going from, these are how the business process flows. This is how they interact. These are the steps across my key streams of my activity, my management of the customers, my supply chain, my planning, my capacity management. That's how they see themselves. Or they may see themselves much more like a typical value chain. So I convert input, marketing, planning into happy customers and their retention. And I actually find that in a lot of businesses, the value chains is the perspective which they buy into. And we need to present that as a translation layer between what we believe it's our capabilities and the business. So business can reflect, yes, okay, so you are when you talk about the marketing management capability, that's where it fits. When you talk about the quality assurance, okay, that fits into my delivery. And then we take the abstraction of our terms and convert it to something more real. Another aspect of frameworks and templates is people say, oh, but shall I use the industry template? And I just show here the very good known example of ETOM, telecommunication industry template. I have even taught people how to use ETOM in the business. But again, there is a quite steep learning curve for business people to understand the language and to start using it. There may be circumstances when it's useful. For example, when you have two companies merging and they use completely two different languages, then abstract industry model or company independent industry model, industry language may be a good first step into establishing a common company vision. But it's only first step. And that may be more or less useful. I have used, I've developed myself some of the industry framework, for example, that's more IT-driven framework for the energy industry. And it was useful to talk with the business people at quite a reasonable abstraction level to help them identify what works well and require more attention. So what are the things they should bother about and what are the things they maybe work well and they don't have to worry about? Because that is ultimate tool of the template. The business should say, it is our company. And if you need a lot of explanation every time you present it to the business, that means that probably you have been taken on the ride of thinking, oh, I have a good template. Probably you don't. And very often that happens with the templates brought by the consulting companies. They bring something which says, oh, that's an industry standard, you should use it. No, that may be a starting point for you, but you should reflect your language and your circumstances to be useful for the business. Because on the end, what you need to business to say, these are my objectives, these are my business objectives, this is what I want to do. And these are the capabilities which I need for it. And they have to agree to that. They have to understand what this mapping means. We need things which are we need those things for innovation. We need those things for from operational perspective. These are actually things which bring differentiation to us as an organization, because that helps them in planning. That helps them to do the most important part of our job. So if the organization doesn't need to change, they don't need architecture. Architecture is needed if there is a change. Of course, change is inevitable, so that in a way gives a background for us. But we should help the organization define what capabilities they should focus on, why should they focus on them, and that's an assessment they themselves have to do, what is really prioritized and what is less prioritized. And for the things which are prioritized, they should be able to say where we are today, where we want to be, and not always we want to be a world class on everything. There may be things which are not actually that important for us from being world class. We basically need them to work on the reasonably established level. And then define what is the gap and what is the remediation for that gap in business world. So what they need as a business to function properly. So that's about the template. So template is a first step very often for us as architects to understand the company. Very often when we go to a company, we try to put in the template, but we should be aware that that template serves not only us, that template serves primary business. The second trap is a method trap. From a delivery perspective and engagement perspective, we may like method, we may like the well-organized projects. By the way, our management may ask us to refer to external reference framework to say what we are doing. So are we aligned with TOGAF? Because they heard the word TOGAF and they want to see it. But what the business really needs from you is something which is fit for purpose. So something which actually is useful. They don't have patience for architecture projects. They need flexibility. And more often today, they need to support the Agile process. And are we doing that? Is TOGAF actually spending too much time on as-is analysis, this preliminary stage, which takes forever and you never move beyond capturing the current architecture? Are we having too long projects? And are we having too long projects because we are following every step separately? And are they becoming too complex? Now, if I start separating those things, can that the output of my work be even understood by anyone? So actually, I believe that separation of business architecture from IS architecture, from technology, from opportunities and solutions is a trap in which we can fall as architects. So maybe we need something a bit more brought together. We need to quickly define what the business wants to achieve. That's our objectives, really. And quickly prioritize the capabilities they need and bring the element of innovation of what is happening outside immediately to this game. And there is a point where you move from the business architecture understood as the business change needs towards the technology. And here you probably also need to do not only working on the target architecture, but doing experimentations much quicker. So defining technology support for those capabilities, but also maybe even giving hints to business what they can already use at this stage. Maybe we have capabilities which can actually help them immediately rather than reinventing the wheel. Because even that simple process takes time. It requires outputs. And why it requires outputs? Because otherwise it's very difficult to say to the management what actually has been achieved. And on the end, if you have target architecture, if you have target solutions, people will ask you, but why they are target solutions? And you have to refer to the problem statement. You have to refer, these are the strategies you want, therefore, these are the right target solutions. Very often we are getting on the border of the architecture governance and how we can simplify. And I truly believe that the key to simplification of any method is an architect daily involvement. Architects have to be helped to be aware of what's going on in the organization and involved quite early on in that business validation and feasibility. If we as architects are only a technical guys, then we'll be always slowing down the business. There's no other choice. Basically, it's the nature of the process. If the process is broken, we cannot deliver right things with it. We need the governance because without the governance, architecture is just a hobby. But the things like design authority are very often too late in the process. They are too complex. We're getting lost in details because we have to do a lot of check marks. So on the end, the business is saying, you are slowing us down. And as very often we don't have right participants in those forums, they are very often just IT people. Business basically rolls over us. Life goes on. They do things what they want. And very often we also hear the argument, we are agile, we don't need architects. You are killing innovation. Get away from, basically move away. We are moving. That I think really means that we as architects need to be aware. We have to capture the demands, and the business has to be able to capture demand very, very easily. So we can consult and decide early. We can dance together with the business. And then we can use our brains and listening to what is happening outside to help the business innovate. And of course, they are things which have to go through the typical robust governance. But these are big projects, and probably you have one or two of them in the organization versus rest. It's probably falling into that space when you have to move quicker, and your governance is really by the quality of architects and by your involvement. So you can remove a lot of the steps by making sure that in the business assessment, we are embedded as architects. And you are bringing the knowledge of the business with you. And the last thing around the methodology is a discussion around Agile. People in Agile say, oh, you don't need architecture because we don't document, we actually don't need it. And developer decides everything. And that we know it is not true. But Agile needs a bit different things. They need a vision rather than a prescription. They need a speed. They need a regular involvement. They probably need a solution architect presence so they can make technology decisions better. And they need a technology validation, regular review, because otherwise we may end up like, having 9 databases for one object essentially created, because that was the easier way for them to divide the job between developers. And we as architects also should make them aware of the plugin artifacts, so things they can reuse to accelerate their movement. Do we have a ready security framework? Do we have a ready deployment frameworks? All these things. Do we have a ready stub for integration? Those things can be already implemented by them. And the last things I want to talk is the software trap, because sooner or later, we as architects will start using software, because we need to be systematic, and the software starts imposing that on us. It asks us to be systematic. It commands that we do things based on the models which are embedded in that software, with the promise of making my future work easier. And is that needed? And I would say partially yes. It has to, because whatever we do has to be maintainable. If it's not one-off exercise that we come to our organization, do some architecture and go away, we are there to be for years, and we have to maintain what we have done. It is changing. We have to make those changes. So that has to be in the software. It brings an input to make an order of the things to do. But it's very easily that we follow the software blindly, and it's making things too complex. We basically say, oh, I will use Archimate because it's a great notation. But then you show to people in the business, and they are mind blown, because they don't even understand what you are talking about. Why you have 4 types of arrows? Why you have dotted lines, sometimes full lines? Why those small pictures means? Why do I have them? And by the way, if I give it to a new architect, there is a huge learning curve. Why there are all these errors appearing all of a sudden if I just want to connect 2 things? Actually, it flows from here to here. Why it is wrong? Oh, because it's a wrong type of object according to Archimate. And I feel really that that's really putting the cart before the horse. It's basically saying method dictates me how I work. No, it shouldn't be that way. Maybe it needs to be simpler. Maybe it needs to be even simpler for business people to buy into that. And yes, my data may be a picture rather than a nice object. Because why? Because that's the way business people understand it better. Maybe I should not have 3 types of objects. Maybe I should have 1. That's a thing you have to test yourself, what works practically with your business and with your stakeholders. So software trap actually requires a lot of attention. It is really good to engage with people who know how to use it, who have that experience. Use those consultants who have those experience, because if they are given right brief, they can help you a lot. And you have to modify the outputs of the architecture software to suit your needs. If they say, no, that's a thing you get, it's not there. And you have to do a hand guide, and you have to know the cutoff level. Not all software will do everything for you, and you have to be aware what are the limitations. One is better at strategy, the other is better in developer guiding. So in summary, we have to remember our purpose as architects. Our purpose is to help business, and that should be prevailing. And I use here the small part of the discussions I've been participating recently. It's actually a quote from Mas Pierce. It's basically, I really like it. The framework is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. If we follow the framework blindly, if we let the framework to dictate our work, we will be not doing our job. It's a starting point. So that is all from my